Title of my sermon this morning is The Challenge of Evil, drawn from the verse from the Gospel of Matthew that reads, "Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to Jesus, 'All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me.'" Evil has existed for as long as people have told stories. By them, we use to make meaning of our world. We have tried to make sense of tragic events and the harm they cause. As Christians, we struggle to reconcile Jesus' experience in the desert when our rationalistic culture dismisses personified evil, embracing other non-theocentric alternatives. What are we to do? The rationalistic argument explains the existence of evil. They principally believe that only humans can be evil. For instance, take the trouble with our environment. A rationalistic would state that the world is good, as is the environment. The world seeks to be in harmony and balance with all that exists within it. Humans have worked and continued to work against the world and the environment, and we have and continue to pollute and abuse the environment. Thus, we have put the world at risk of cataclysmic change and imperil our existence as well. To rescue the environment and return it to balance, we must correct our evil ways by changing our behavior. Importantly, the wealthy nations and citizens of the world are most to blame since they use more resources than they should. Thus, they must pay most to correct the problem. For the rationalistic people and for rationalistic viewpoint and argument, people and their institutions are evil and corrupting, using the world's resources unfairly. The world is innocent and blameless. The problem must be solved, allowing the earth to return to harmony and balance. The best way to fix things is for the rich to give up a good portion of their wealth, and then humanity can live at peace with all of creation. Within this argument, we can also hear the echoes of a biblical theme and a biblical story. In Genesis chapter 1, God created the world out of nothing. Creation was a formless void and doesn't change and didn't become something else until God spoke, creating order to all things. At the end of each day, each step of God's activity, God said it was good. God created humans within the confines of the world and gave them tasks. In verse 28 of chapter 1, God said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God charged humans with the care of the earth, which was good. As time passed, however, some humans abused their power, sinning against creation by polluting it and unfairly taking its resources. As the world went out of harmony and balance, it became unstable. It began self-correcting, but in doing so harmed humans. As the balance continued to be askew, the world's environment got worse, and its corrective acts more destructive. Some humans have recognized the evil done by humans and are working to restore the balance of the world, thereby saving both humanity and the earth. The first creation story illustrates the way the ancients made sense of the world. Their goal wasn't science, but meaning. The story allowed them to give purpose to what was happening around them. People are no different today. We draw on ancient stories and retell them in ways that address the challenges of our time, especially those of evil. Our present-day interpretations of old stories are meaning-making tools that help us understand our circumstances. These powerful meaning-making devices don't just tell a story, they also direct our thoughts about things like theology and God. The rationalists are not the only ones who make meaning from stories. Looking at Jesus' experience in the wilderness, we find a different interpretation of the world. Jesus was driven into the desert by the Spirit of God, and after a time when he was famished, the devil appeared. The devil tempted Jesus 3 times to test his allegiance to God. Jesus passed the tests and sent the devil away. Note that our reading presents evil differently than in the first story from Genesis. It is not solely a human creation. Evil is a creature that exists and can interact with people and has dominion over the world. The account from Matthew has much more in common with Genesis chapter 2, which we heard read this morning, than it does with Genesis chapter 1, although both are creation stories. We actually have 2 creation stories in the Bible. In the second chapter, it includes a story by which God still created the universe, but didn't pronounce that everything was good. As you may remember from our story this morning, God created the garden, God created Eden, where Adam and Eve lived. Evil also existed in the garden. It had the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which in a way presumes a separate understanding of evil than simply within the heart of humans. Another evil thing was in Eden too. The serpent, which was synonymous with the devil, also lived there. And soon the serpent enticed them, Adam and Eve, to eat the fruit. Thus they fell from grace, and God evicted them from the garden. In the second creation account, evil exists on its own. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil also means that evil existed separately and prior to humanity. Moreover, evil was personified by the serpent that could tempt and turn people away from good and even God. Thus, when Jesus encountered the devil, he re-engaged an ancient presence. But unlike Adam, Jesus resisted the devil's temptation. The second creation story makes evil a separate and corrupting force and person who tempts humans to sin. Jesus, however, came into the world to conquer evil and the devil, and bringing a new kingdom with him. As the second Adam, and we can hear the echoes of the second Adam in our Romans reading this morning, Jesus also showed people the way to live in right relationship with creation and God. His teachings are a moral guide and help people resist evil. If Christians follow Jesus' teaching, they will be able to resist evil and the devil. They will live in harmony with each other and in time return to the Garden of Eden. We and the world will be restored and renewed with the help of God. The question for us is, which narrative? Do we believe that only humans can be evil, or do we think that evil is an external force acting on humans? The way we answer that question helps make meaning of the world and the way we live in it. Our answer changes how we interpret events as well. For instance, are nations evil or not? Can a person or a group of people become evil or commit evil acts because of their own beliefs? Can someone or a group be blamed for a natural disaster or a pandemic even? Or does the world with its destructive forces sometimes erupt in chaos and disorder? Are there evil forces at work that corrupt people and influence people to do evil acts? What role does God play in all of this? These are age-old questions, but they seep into our culture and shape how we act. I'm not going to give you a simple answer to these questions. We are meant to grapple with them and to make our own choices and thus our own meaning from them. I will, however, make one observation. In his exchange with the devil, Jesus proved a couple things. Jesus didn't ignore the devil. He didn't destroy it, nor deny it either. Jesus answered the devil's questions. He also demonstrated his allegiance to and trust in God. Jesus showed that faith in God could answer and overcome evil. He showed the way to resist it and resist the devil. Faithfulness to God always conquers evil. And most importantly, good outlasts evil.